Okay, guys, welcome back to another episode of Rotten Reviews. On this episode, I'm going to take a look at the 2005 movie White Noise, starring Michael Keaton. It has a 7% on the tomato meter and a 31% on the audience score. This movie is quite rotten. It's unbelievably rotten. And I was quite shocked by how bad and convoluted of a mess it turned out to be towards the end. Luckily, I didn't see this in the theater. I saw it when it was out on DVD. This is probably the worst movie of 2005, and yet, budget-wise, considering the budget and considering the profit the movie made, it was highly successful. It made at least a 5 times return on its investment. So it's like a sad addition to many horror movies that do the same thing. They are released on a very small budget and they flop really bad, and yet they make enough movie just getting people on the initial opening weekend to see them that they are quite successful, and they go on to inspire more filmmakers to produce even more crap horror movies that don't even they shouldn't even be classified as B movies. They should be classified as C or D movies, in my opinion. And I think the tomato meter at 7% is fair. The audience score could easily drop to 7%. That would again be fair. The only thing significant about this movie is that it has Michael Keaton in it, and that makes me question why he did this. I don't know what his paycheck was, but maybe he was in need of the money at the time. I don't know. I'm not going to dig too deep to find out. But let's just say this movie has a premise that actually interested me. The EVP premise, electronic voice phenomena, in which recording devices, whether audio or video, are used to capture paranormal messages, for example, spirits, ghosts, demons, etc. It's fascinating. It's a well-worn trope now with ghost hunters and etc. But at the time in 2005, this was a new take on it, involving VCRs and video cameras and TV screens that at the time an analog TV screen would produce what's called white noise. If you're too young to remember, then you weren't around when we had VHF and UHF TV stations, and the static or white noise you got was, what you found between stations on the tuning dial. And it's what you found if the signal was lost to your channel. You would get white noise on the cathode ray screen. It kind of plays on that in this film. Now, this is a 2005 film, so at the time even, white noise was pretty much a thing of the past. Everybody my age, Generation X, is well familiar with what white noise is, but somebody that was born, in the 90s or later, when we've made the switch to digital television, there is no more white noise. If you buy a consumer electronics device today with any kind of video, whether it's a computer monitor or a TV screen or a DVD player, a Blu-ray player, video game console, when it loses signal, it either goes to a black screen, a blue screen, or whatever. There is no white noise effect. So it's a relic of the past, but it worked quite well to establish, a creepy premise, a ghost hunters type premise. Now, that's about the only thing the movie had going for it, was that type of premise and marketing that as some scary thing. And Michael Keaton. The rest is really bad. The plot goes nowhere. The characters don't improve anything. I don't even remember the names of the other co-stars. I have seen them in other things. They probably wish they would just forget about this, or that they had anything to do with it. Again, this was a commercial success. Everybody got paid. Whoever produced it got quite a paycheck out of it, but it didn't deserve it. In fact, white noise is actually offensive in its ending. It's a convoluted mess. You don't know if you're dealing with ghosts, demons, or what you're dealing with. You just know that the main character of the film, played by Michael Keaton, you follow him through the story. He ends up dead for no good reason, and it's just a mess, an unsatisfied, confusing mess. Let's move right into the audience reviews and see what everybody else thinks of this. As of October of 2019, there are still people actually watching this somewhere. I'm not sure where this is playing. I haven't seen this even on streaming in a while. But somewhere out there, somebody's like pulling this out of a bargain bin in a Target or a Walmart, and they're popping this in, I guess. So let's start in on the first review, which happens to be a 4-star. Good movie, a bit similar to The Ring. I'll disagree. First of all, in the stars, this deserves like half a star. It could peak to 1 star, maybe, but I'm going to stick with half a star. That's my gut feeling on this. And as far as it being similar to The Ring, well, The Ring featured a VHS tape that was played. And yes, there was some white noise involved in the playing of the tape. Otherwise, no, it has nothing to do with it. The premise is completely different. In The Ring, a VHS tape or a copy of that tape has like an evil spirit attached to it. In this film, White Noise, it involves a paranormal researcher using white noise on television screens with VCR tapes to record it, looking for messages to be found, the EVP, electronic voice phenomena. And in the movie, it actually progresses to ghosts appearing in the white noise and demons or whatever. So it's a completely different premise. The Ring isn't exactly a masterwork, the English version and its sequel. It's not exactly a masterwork of cinema, but it's far superior to this in every regard. Let's move on. 1 star, dull and devoid of any suspense or atmosphere. I'll disagree. It kind of has a suspense and an atmosphere to it, but it doesn't last long and it just becomes very boring. But the first 5 or 10 minutes of it, it has promise, but it goes nowhere. 3 stars, a great central performance from Michael Keaton with a decent direction, but the story is just too muddled and generic. It's not even generic. This story just goes all over the place and ends up nowhere and in a pointless end. Saying it's just generic is being too kind to it. 2.5 stars. The movie itself is pretty interesting and builds a very good atmosphere, but then the end totally ruins it. Like they had an unused special effects budget that needed to be used at the end. Such a shame. It ruins an otherwise great movie. Just turn it off before and you're fine. Yeah, it's really strange in that all through the movie, there's very sparing special effects. It's very cheaply and quickly done, so quickly that you barely see it. And yet at the end of the movie, there's like everything they had for special effects budget and production-wise, everybody they had working on it, they put everything into blowing their load in that one final scene that was so off-putting and cringy because it like overpowered everything else that had been done in the movie, and it also added up to something that made no sense. But yeah, almost every dime of the CGI budget, the effects budget, was put into the final act of the movie that added up to nothing. Very strange. 3 stars. Despite some of what most films in the genre lack, this one has it. Problem being, it's kind of boring. Sure, there is plenty of suspense and creep, though. Yeah, there's a lot of suspense done in a lot of ways that we've seen done before, but it never goes anywhere. It does just become boring as it never goes anywhere. 4 stars. Not nearly as bad as the reviews are suggesting to the audience. Keaton delivers a solid performance, as well as Diane Kruger. The theme is satisfying. I believe you should watch it once or at least 3 times to really get into the psyche of it all. No, don't take this advice from December of 2017. Whoever's telling you this is trying to do damage to you. They're trying to waste your time and do you some kind of mental harm. Do not take their advice. It's really bad advice. 2 stars. A rather bland and mediocre thriller. White Noise explores the mysterious paranormal science of EVP, electronic voice phenomenon. Michael Keaton stars as John Rivers, a bereaved widower who discovers that his dead wife is sending him messages from the beyond through EVP that urge him to help people who are in danger from evil spirits. The writing is pretty weak and the story doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it doesn't spend much time developing who the evil spirits are. Yeah, it's very strange. Like, the main character played by Michael Keaton, he is eventually approached by this guy that's been stalking him for a long time throughout the film for whatever reason, who tells him he's a paranormal researcher and he's got messages from his wife that he's recorded that he needs to tell him about. It doesn't make sense on its face because why is this paranormal researcher stalking Michael Keaton for no reason throughout his travels in this town? Completely pathetic. And then, Michael Keaton's character goes back to the house of this paranormal researcher that's filled with VCRs and TV sets, and is shown the messages, and immediately he believes it's his wife. He's sucked into this right away. And it just gets worse from there. The logic falls completely apart. Needless to say, this EVP researcher ends up dead, his place trashed. It's never explained who does this, whether it's the evil spirits or some conspiracy of government agents or whoever. There's a lot of deaths in this that go unexplained, like we're not told whether demons are doing this or people are doing this or accidents are happening or what the hell's happening. And you know, the other part of the plot that makes no sense is that the police like know that this main character, everywhere he goes, these deaths are happening around him, and it looks almost like he would be the suspect. You know, this would be the logical thing, that he's the suspect in these deaths. He's the common factor at the scene of the crime, and yet the police never call him in for investigation, and it's just kind of shrugged off that all these violent deaths are happening around him. It makes no sense whatsoever. The police just don't even want to question him, what he's doing at the scenes of all these violent deaths. 3.5 stars, tame thriller movie, lots of jump scares, but not really a rewatchable movie. I disagree, this is like 1 star. And you know, speaking of jump scares, the movie actually ends at a cemetery where the main protagonist, Michael Keaton's character, he's being buried. It's his funeral. It ends with a pointless jump scare that leads to nothing. Literally, a character at his funeral twists her head to look at something really quick in broad daylight, and that's the jump scare, and it has the dramatic jump scare music, and then it rolls to credits. It's what? Like, it's really bad. It's really bad and over the top, in your face bad. 3.5 stars, a good psychological horror, smart idea, and had me scared anyway. Yeah, it might have you kind of tensed up and a little bit scared for the first 10 minutes, and then it just becomes drawn out and boring because nothing actually happens. 1 star, I love Michael Keaton, but this was painful. Yeah, it's like you ask why he did this. Did he need the paycheck that badly? I guess he did. We don't know what was going on in his life, but yeah, he knows this was bad. He knows. He just needed this paycheck for whatever reason. 2 stars. It should have been better than this. Yeah, anybody else could have made it better than this. It's just they didn't want to or care. But you know, the thing is, this was commercially successful quite a bit, making like 5 times back for its investment. So yeah, it's just weird, you know, you see something this bad that was phoned in and pointless and insultingly bad and ended bad and was boring, and there's very little good stuff to say about it, and yet everybody involved got paid, and whoever fronted the money for this got quite a return. And yeah, if it was this easy to make money, everybody would be doing it. 4 stars. I loved it, to be honest. I usually only watch paranormal scary movies, and I don't really care for gore and scares for the sake of it, so it was my kind of movie. But there were a lot of questions I had after watching it, like, why did Sarah take drugs after seeing herself on the EVP TV? Like, that entire hotel scene was very confusing. I didn't understand why he was drugging her at a hotel. Other than that, I really liked the movie. Yeah, there was a weird subplot where there was another character, a woman, who also lost somebody close to her, and she was getting messages like Michael Keaton was from this paranormal researcher. And for some reason, she overdosed herself on drugs or had a drug problem and then committed suicide off the ledge of a hotel room window. And it really served no purpose and made no sense, and again, it didn't go anywhere or have anything to do with anything else. A lot of this movie was like disconnected elements that you would find in other scary movies that were put together, and the main character like experienced them one after the other, but they made no logical sense and went nowhere. But again, this made money. Hard to believe. 2.5 stars. Although it has an original and creepy premise, it never quite builds into anything memorable or more than a few jump scares, which are not all that scary either. Yeah, it ended on a big jump scare that had no purpose. You're just left wondering, like, what? What was that? what did I just see? 3.5 stars. I enjoyed this film. Michael Keaton did a good job in the suspense thriller. That is better than what others have said it to be. I disagree, and you're watching a different kind of movie, or you're imagining a totally different plot while you're watching it, and you're making it up in your head as the running time goes along, because this movie did not provide anything that anybody else would have wanted out of a story. 3.5 stars. Behind all the trashy CGI, pretty decent story. Yeah, the CGI was really bad and cheap and flashed through all the way through the movie. And then at the very end of the movie, they actually put a few $1,000s into it and blew it all in one few seconds. That was pointless. 4 stars. I saw this in the cinema and thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm going against popular opinion on this one for sure. Okay, sure, you just want to be the contrarian. Okay, but that's meaningless. 2.5 stars. I don't know why critics have torn to pieces this picture. It gives some scares and becomes really creepy from the middle to the end. It doesn't take a critic to destroy this. This is a review from 2015, 10 years after the movie was released. It doesn't even take a critic or much of any thought to rip this to pieces. It's completely rotten. 1.5 stars. As the movie goes on, you gradually get you're watching a lot of white noise and nothing more. Yeah, it's a fantastic premise just taken nowhere. You get more excitement and meaning out of an episode of Ghost Hunters. Really, seriously. 1 star. White Noise is a clever premise that gets dumber and dumber and dumber. Michael Keaton is always likable, but this performance here stinks. His performance is nothing positive or negative. He's just there. He doesn't really act. He just goes through it. And again, it's just like he's collecting a paycheck. 1.5 stars. Though its premise is intriguing as well as having some creepy moments and a solid performance by Michael Keaton, White Noise fails to be wholly satisfying and coherent, with a vapid face and terrible conclusion. Yeah, I'll agree. That's a lot of words to say that it just sucked. You could just say it sucked. 2 stars. I found it incredibly boring. That's about all I can say. There were some creepy scenes and some may get some scares, but overall boring. 2 stars. I found it okay. 2.5 stars. Halfway through the theme, had a head-on collision, and from then onwards, it's a dumb, surreal ghost story. I'm not even sure if it's a ghost story. You don't know if you're dealing with ghosts, demons, or the character's imagination. You know, it might have played on that and done a better job and just became a psychological thriller at the end. But no, at the end it's some kind of demons. But what kind or why they're doing all this, who knows? We don't know. It's not explained. We're not even supposed to care. 1.5 stars. It's good to see Keaton take on a new genre of film. Unfortunately, the performance he admittedly phoned in doesn't help the weak script take off in the direction it could have went under a better screenplay. Avoid unless routine PG-13 horrors are your thing. Yeah, I don't even know why it would need to be PG-13. Could have been PG. There wasn't anything, that scary in here. 1 star. I found this movie really pointless. I love Keaton, but this movie was a bad attempt at horror. The movie is about a widower who contacts dead people or spirits through radio noise. It's all just a bunch of black and white nonsense. It's like your TV going out in the old days and seeing faces in it. He soon realizes some of these spirits are evil and want out. He spends all of his time trying to connect with his wife, and he hears her voice and sees images of her. It really is a mess of a movie. Actually, this reviewer in his 1-star review is doing this movie too much credit. It's worse than that. No, it's never explained that there are evil spirits and they want out of anything. That's you reading into it. It failed to even do that. He talks about the radio noise. There's even a scene in which Michael Keaton's wife appears to leave some kind of disembodied voice on his answering machine that turns out to not be there when he tries to play it back twice. A lot of the stuff, this reviewer is even giving this too much credit. It's not even all that. 2.5 stars. It starts to feel like two different movies in the middle, but White Noise is creepy and clever. Nothing clever, creepy only for like the first 5 minutes or so, 10 minutes, and then it just becomes pointless and boring. 3.5 stars. Good film, but can go slow. Has its flaws, but still interesting and great filmmaking. No. 2 stars, not overly scary with a disappointing ending. Not over, yeah, disappointing. It just doesn't make sense. There's no point to it. 1.5 stars. Can Michael Keaton play in anything good besides Batman? This film proves no. White Noise takes an interesting premise and spits on it with its emotionless performances, dull characters, and cheap scares that make White Noise something you should think twice about before buying. 2 stars, an interesting premise but a failed execution. Keaton tries but is pulled down by modern cheap thrills and scares. I don't even think he tries, he just wanted the paycheck. 1.5 stars, supernatural bullshit, well done for that muddled, stupid blend of The Ring and The Sixth Sense. It's not even that. Please don't try to say it's The Ring and The Sixth Sense put together. It isn't. You're giving it way too much credit. Either one of those movies, they have 100 times more meaningful stuff going on than this one does. 3.5 stars, beautiful and enjoyable movie with a shocking end. Can't wait to see the second part. Not that scary as it seems. I could call her a light thriller movie. Really. A shocking end? No, it's just the main character, he just dies. He's killed by demons or ghosts, and his body is broken, and then he's buried at a funeral, and then, yeah. What's the meaning behind that? What's shocking? There's nothing there. 3 stars, an okay supernatural thriller with a compelling story on a frequent topic that appeared on paranormal shows, Ghost Hunters, and Ghost Adventures, turns into a cheesy horror genre weapon and a center of the debate on whether the EVPs that are heard are credible or not including the ones that were voiced by the film's cast. Despite the film supposed to be compelling, its line stays flat, like a ghost stays silent, with some jumps on the line. Wow, this 3-star review is even trying to read more than there is here. No. Some things happen. They happen for no reason. They're not necessarily ghosts. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. Sometimes they're demons, sometimes they're not. Sometimes there's something going on, sometimes there isn't. The whole thing adds up to a bunch of nothing. It's like discontinued stuff thrown together that means nothing. 1/2 star, doesn't make any sense. Most of the time you got to see Keaton staring at the TV, nonsense thriller without any scares or meaning. Yeah, and it's like Michael Keaton's character starts out, he believes that his wife is trying to contact him through white noise of different types, TV, radio, answering machine. Again, what is it he's trying to get from this? It's in the plot, it's that she's been missing, but later her body is discovered, but yet he's still going on with the EVP messages. I don't know, you get the sense that maybe he's trying to find the killer, and her killer is later presented as this serial killer that's also trying to find messages through TV screens. So it becomes a serial killer movie at some point, but yet the EVP stuff is still there too, and you're left wondering, why is anybody doing this? Why is the serial killer doing EVP stuff? Why is Keaton trying to find out where his wife is when she's dead and he knows? And then what is he trying to accomplish with finding the serial killer and confronting him? What is going on here? Why is anybody doing anything? What's the point of it all? None of it makes any sense. It's like a lot of different things from different movies are put together, and then somebody figured out ways to connect the dots, but none of it makes any sense or adds up to anything. 2.5 stars, way slow, nothing much happens. 2 stars, started off strong but turned into a boring thriller. It's not even a thriller because nothing makes sense. It's like things are connected together just by Keaton's character finding them one after the other, but they have no connections to each other. 2 stars, a surprise box office hit in early 2005. White Noise feels more like a suspense-laced drama than a first-rate thriller. Bolstered by the presence of a proven veteran actor in Michael Keaton, Noise struggles to figure out exactly what kind of movie it should be, as its focus on electronic voice phenomenon EVP gives it the excuse of throwing in a bunch of loud sound effects, but there is a shortage of true scares, as Keaton's character appears to be sincere in his efforts once he stumbled. Well, sincere in his efforts to do what? What is he doing? He's moving from point A to B for no purpose. None of this stuff is connected together. Like at one point he finds a car crash that's supposedly prophesized by whoever's in the TV giving him the messages. So he comes to this car crash and he rescues a baby that's in the car crash. Well, he doesn't really rescue the baby, he just finds the baby in the car crash. It has nothing to do with anything else either. Like, what is the point? You've got a prophecy, a car crash, his wife's disappearance, and then finding her body, and then messages from the wife coming from the TV and the answering machine, and then a serial killer that supposedly killed the wife, and then at the end, the demons or ghosts kill him. What's the point of all this stuff? Like, it makes no damn sense. 1.5 stars. My thoughts while watching White Noise. Michael Keaton looks old. Ian McNeice got really fat. Dear God, this is boring. Yeah, it's boring too. 3 stars, underrated, give it a chance. No, I disagree. You can't give this a chance. Don't bother giving this a chance. You'll just end up asking yourself, one, why did I put myself through that and didn't listen to other people? And number two, who goes and pays money for this so that it makes a good profit so that people can keep making garbage movies like this? It just made a profit because enough people were convinced to go see this in the theater before word of mouth could tell them that it was garbage. That's all that's relevant to this. It made money and it shouldn't have. It deserves a 7% audience score as well as the 7% tomato score. It's pathetic, and I'm going to get out of here before I just become depressed thinking about how this made so much money. And I will see you again on the next episode of Rotten Reviews.